What's going on? This is Ryan with Automatic Comics, and up next we are going to go over the top 5 surprising high sales I saw last week. Stay tuned. Alright, so before we get started, please remember to hit that like button and hit the subscribe button if you'd like to see more content like this. So what I've done is I've decided to break this out into 2 videos with the top 5 surprising high sales and the top 5 surprising low sales, just to shorten them up a little bit, get them a little easier to get out regularly. Now, I also want to congratulate Mike Sewell, sorry if I pronounced your name wrong, as the giveaway winner for the Batman, Silver Age Batman book from my earlier video. Your comment was the one that was selected, was randomly selected, and so the book is out on its way to you now, so congratulations. Now, let's get into those top 5 surprising high sales. Now, number 5. This was Incredible Hulk number 1, but this was a CGC 0.5 restored UK variant. So this is the UK version. This is the pence copy. It has that 9D up in the corner instead of the cents copy like you would normally see. Sold for $5,040. Now, the restoration on this one is, it's really sad because it's so close to being a blue label. The only restoration was that the centerfold was trimmed on the right edge. Not even the cover or anything. Somebody just trimmed the centerfold. So that's too bad. That's why that one got that restored label. Even though I know a lot of people think it should be a green label instead of a purple label when you get that, there's trimming that's going on. But I have mentioned in some prior videos that these UK variants are getting more and more, say, kind of like accepted by collectors. They seem to be inching up, getting a little closer in price to their cents copy counterparts. Now, that's definitely not true across the board. You will see the pence copies sell for discounts just like before, but it seems to be more regularly I am now seeing the pence copies sell for more, getting a little closer to those the cents copies, the US copies. Hulk number 1, though, that book has been on a tear regardless, whether it's the cents copy or the pence copy. Just over the last 6 months, that book, as well as the other 5 issues from the first 6, just all have been exploding in price over the last 6 months. So you can see people are happy to get whatever copy they can get their hands on. Now, I couldn't find another 0.5 restored sale recently. The highest that I saw was a $4,000 sale back in December of 2019. The most recent was a $3,019 sale in September of 2020. Nothing really any more recent than that. And those were cents copies. Those weren't the pence copies. There weren't any that I found that were the pence copies or the UK copies. But a 0.5 Universal, it sold its highest sale and most recent sale was in December of 2021 for $7,500. So it didn't pass that, but that's pretty close for a restored copy, a purple label copy, to get that close to a Universal copy. Now, I had estimated the price at $4,000. This was 26% above that estimate. And obviously not an easy book to estimate the price on with no prior sales, having to go off of other restored copies, going off of the Universal 0.5 sales, and just kind of trying to make an educated guess on what that book would sell for. Still, I felt like this was a very strong sale for that book. Now, for alternatives for Hulk, I mean, you could go with any of those first 6 issues. Like I said, they've all gotten really expensive lately. I think a book that is a great alternative is Hulk number 102. It's that first solo title from the Silver Age after they stopped the original one. And so it's similar to Submariner number 1, Iron Man number 1, Captain America 100, and this one is much more affordable than those other books. For a 6 to a 7 copy, like a 6070 copy, a nice higher mid-grade copy, it's about $300 to $350, which I think is just a great deal in comparison. And it's a cool cover, definitely one that I would consider as an alternative, considering for Hulk number 1, you're spending thousands of dollars no matter what, obviously, no matter what the condition is. Alright, so now for number 4, this is one of my favorite books that I have actually in my collection. This is Startling Terror Tales number 11 with a CGC 2.5 that sold for $3,600. This was a really strong sale for this book. If you watched my top 25 video that I did recently, this was the book that I selected for my 1.8 grade slot for that book. And that was actually, but that was before I picked up the Tech 168. That one would be the one that goes in that 1.8 slot now. But at that point, that was my number one book with a 1.8 grade. Now, this is a classic L.B. Cole pre-code horror cover. All of those things have been just exploding over the last year in price. L.B. Cole books, at least the key issues, have been getting much more expensive. Pre-code horror books continue to just be very, very strong. And this is one of his most in-demand covers. Now, I had estimated the price of this book at $2,800. This was 29% above that estimate. And congratulations to the person who won the book. I've talked to him a few times on Instagram, so I know he was very excited to pick up this copy of that book. Now, the prior record for this book was all the way back in February of 2021 for this grade. It's one of those books that just doesn't sell all that often. You're going to get maybe one sale a year in a grade, and in that February 2021 sale, it was $1,517. So this beat that record by 137%. But like I said, that was before the comic boom. That was in February of 2021. And so with what pre-code horror books, L.B. Cole books have done since then, it is not a surprise that we have a big sale with this book. And that's why I had estimated it at $2,800. I had estimated it at a record already by quite a bit, but this beat that by even more. Now, there are tons of great alternatives for L.B. Cole covers, many of which that are much more affordable than this one. Because like I said, this is one of the most in-demand books for L.B. Cole, and so it's going to be expensive. But one, if you want one that's a little less expensive that's related to this book, you could go for Suspense Comics number 8. Now, again, it's a rare book. It's not a book you're going to find very easily, and it's going to cost you a lot of money. But in a 2.5, that one will likely run you around $2,500 instead of $3,600. So you'll save a little bit of money, and that's the first time that you have that spider that L.B. Cole used in Startling Terror Tales number 11 on the cover. That's a much earlier book. It's from back in the 40s, whereas Startling Terror Tales 11 is from 1952, I believe. And so it's quite a few years later that he reused that character and kind of ramped up the blood and the violence on it. But if you want the first time he uses that spider character on a cover, that is Suspense Comics number 8. All right, now number 3, getting quite a bit more modern than those books. This is X-Men number 133 with a CGC 9.8 that sold for a record $2,340. Now, most Bronze Age X-Men books have really been falling off since last year. They got really, really expensive last year with the comic boom, and they've been coming down. I do expect them to make a turn and start coming back up again, but they've been on a general downtrend. But this one is kind of bucking that trend. It's going the opposite, because this book has been getting stronger sales recently, and this was a big new record for this book in a 9.8. And this is the first solo cover for Wolverine. It's a cool Wolverine cover, and I had estimated the price at $1,800 for this 9.8. This was 30% above that estimate. The prior record was $1,803 in October of 2021, but there had just been an $1,800 sale on March 12th. So this is a big jump, a $540 jump just since a few days prior to this sale. Now for Wolverine, there are plenty of alternatives out there. I've talked about them in these videos a number of times, all the different alternatives that you have. A great one definitely is Wolverine number 1 from the limited series, the mini series. The same 9.8 is going to cost you about $850, and it's come down quite a bit from where it was last year during the peak comic boom sales, where it peaked at $1,365. So down over $500 from that peak sale. And it does look like it's still maybe trending down a little bit, but I think that's one that is a decent book to buy, a pretty safe book to buy, and that book sells all the time. If you just have some patience with it, wait for the right auction, you can get it even below that $850 price that it's been going at right now. Now, you don't have to buy that book in a 9.8. You can buy that book raw, get it usually around $100. Now, it's not going to be a 9.8 candidate book, but you can get a raw copy for around $100. So definitely a book that you don't have to spend hundreds or thousands of dollars, you can get it much more affordably and have that cool Wolverine cover. All right, now number 2, going to an independent publisher for this one. This is Cerebus the Aardvark #1 with a CGC 5.0 that sold for a huge $3,360. Now, this is a book you don't see sell very often. It is not a very common book. It actually, there's some difficulty with it because there are some counterfeits out there. And now, there are sites that show you how to identify the counterfeit versus the actual real copy. So if you do come across one of those, make sure that you check that site because you may be buying the counterfeit, which is worth obviously a lot less money. Now, I don't know what's really driving the recent high sales on this book. I know he has a tie to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and so that's something that I think really kind of helps drive the values with that book. But I checked news to see if there was maybe something that was going on recently that might have been driving up prices, and I didn't really find anything. So if somebody has an idea, if they want to mention in the comments if there's some show or something like that coming out with the character, then that could be what's maybe moving the prices on this book. But I had estimated the price at a 5.0 at $2,000. This was $1,360 above that, 68% above that estimate. Just a huge sale for this book. Now, the other thing that could be potentially driving this is that people have been speculating a lot on these independent characters, these independent publishers. And that's just because a lot of these characters are taken by Warner Brothers, by Disney, by the really big studios. And so they're specking out that these independent characters are going to get picked up by Netflix or somebody else that's trying to create content, and then they'll see the prices in those comics go up. That's a possibility, but obviously this is not an easy book to spec on. It's expensive, it's rare, but you can find other issues from the run. They're much more affordable. Just move outside of issue #1. All right, now for #1, the most surprising high sale that I saw. This was Fantastic Four #1, but this was a coverless raw copy, and it sold for $4,320. Now, what this does is this shows just the state of demand for these major Silver Age keys. I mean, over $4,000 for a raw coverless copy. That is a huge sale for this book, and there's just huge demand in any condition, even without a cover. Now, this is obviously the first appearance of the Fantastic Four. They are what basically turned Marvel around, got them going towards superheroes instead of the kind of more monster titles that they'd been doing earlier. And I had estimated the price of this book at $2,500. This was 73% above that estimate. Now, the last coverless copy sold for $2,100 in August of last year, but it was missing the centerfold, so it was incomplete. So I thought maybe this one would go for a little bit more, around $2,500, and that last one was graded, this one wasn't. So you always have that question of maybe there's something that's missing, something like that, so you're taking more of a risk when you're buying that raw copy of that book. But regardless, this was a huge sale for that book, and it's what we've really seen with these lower grade copies of a lot of these big Silver Age keys. They're getting bid up quite a bit because there's so much competition for them, because when you get to higher grades, they're so expensive, just tens of thousands of dollars, that most people can't afford a copy of that book, but they can maybe afford a $4,000 copy, which is still really expensive, but it's something where it's a little more attainable than, say, a 4.0 or a 5.0, where now you're talking about the prices of cars. You know, you're talking about $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 for a book, whereas at least this is still under $10,000. But if you're looking for an alternative for this one, there's a book I mentioned very recently, actually a book that I just sent in to CGC about a week ago, and it's a book I really like, Fantastic Four #3. I think it's a great cover. I actually like the cover better than Fantastic Four #1. It's the first time you see them in their trademark outfits, which I think is just makes it very important, just a key in itself right there, because that's effectively how they looked for decades after that. So a big deal to me that you have that on the cover, and I just think it's a cool cover. Now, the other thing that I've mentioned as well is that it's a relatively low census count book, so there are not as many, or it seems there are not as many of them out there as the other issues around it. It is still tough, though, to get under $1,000. It's an expensive book, and that's really true with any of the first 6 issues. They've all gotten really expensive. Tough to get any of them under about $1,000, if not quite a bit more, especially when you're talking issue 4 for Submariner and issue 5 for Dr. Doom. Those books have both exploded, just extremely expensive. But if you want something that has what I think is a cool those first costumes, then consider trying to pick up Fantastic Four number 3. It's still going to cost you a lot less than issue number 1. All right, so those are the top 5 most surprising high sales that I saw last week. Hope you enjoyed this video. Again, congratulations to Mike for the Batman book. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you'd like to see more content like this. I've got more videos over here if you'd like to watch some of my other videos, and the subscription button right here. If you'd like to subscribe to the channel, I'd really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next video.